The movie begins in a desert where a lone child, gnawing on a human finger, searches for his mother. Meanwhile, a car drives down a road that abruptly ends in the middle of the desert. The driver, Wyndham, a photographer here to capture the solar eclipse, steps out and continues on foot. After taking a few photos and noticing the day coming to an end, Wyndham heads back to his car but encounters a lost and frightened boy. Wyndham offers help, but the boy points to where he lost his parents and walks away. Trying to assist, Wyndham follows, but the boy rudely refuses his help and leaves him alone in the darkness, with no way to return to civilization. Wyndham lies down to sleep on the ground but struggles, reliving the day's events in his mind. Suddenly, he hears strange sounds and follows the noise to find stakes with ropes strung between them, from which hang bottles that produce a melodious chime. In the desert before him is a large canyon with a wooden house at the bottom, where a woman wanders, singing. Wyndham asks for help, but she enters the house as if not hearing him. He finds an iron ladder leading down and begins to descend, only to find it transitions to a rope ladder halfway down. Overcoming both, he approaches the house, knocks persistently, but receives no answer. Wyndham opens the door himself and enters. The woman standing at the stove greets him calmly, as if she had been expecting his arrival. Alina offers Wyndham dinner, and even though he declines, she serves him soup and places it on the table. Wyndham appreciates her hospitality but continues to ask how he might leave this strange place. He mentions the boy he encountered and requests water. Alina, suggesting that he rest until morning, is welcomed by Wyndham. He accepts her care and settles into the bed she points out, observing her as she tidies up. Wyndham notices that Alina is young and beautiful. The next morning, he gathers his belongings and heads outside, hoping to find a way home. However, he is puzzled to find that the rope ladder he used the previous day has disappeared. Without it, reaching the iron ladder is impossible. Returning to the house, Wyndham takes photos of the surroundings and the drawings on the canyon walls, which all seem dark and morbid. He then notices Alina repairing the roof and asks her about the missing ladder. She either doesn't understand or pretends not to know, and although she hints at other residents, she doesn't provide any direct information. Frustrated, Wyndham walks around the canyon calling for help but gets no response. Later, Alina asks him to undress so she can wash his clothes, insisting it wouldn't be proper to return home dirty. Reluctantly, Wyndham agrees. That night, he struggles to sleep again and goes outside, trying once more to find an escape, but to no avail. The next morning, he searches the house, finds a hammer, and attempts to climb the canyon wall. Suddenly, he notices movement above and a chicken carcass falls, causing him to lose his balance and fall. Wyndham regains consciousness in the darkness, his leg injured by the hammer. He cries out in pain and Alina rushes to his aid but refuses to answer his questions about the children he saw on the cliff. For several days, he drifts in and out of fever, unable to tell if he's truly seeing children around him. When he finally recovers enough to move, he limps outside and demands that Alina instruct the children above to pull him out. She pretends not to understand and offers to care for him, but Wyndham rejects her help, insisting on returning home to his work. He rudely pushes her away and examines his injured leg, realizing it will take a long time to heal. Suddenly, he hears voices from above and sees the boy from earlier, holding a little girl by the hand. They cheerfully ask how they can help, and upon learning that Wyndham wants to climb out, the boy promises to bring ropes and use a winch to pull him up. Before leaving, the boy asks Wyndham an odd question about his favorite color. Wyndham replies that it's red and urges them to hurry. The boy and girl leave and Wyndham checks his wallet, deciding not to retrieve his other belongings. Suddenly, a rope falls from above and the same boy advises Wyndham to tie himself securely, which he does. As they begin to pull him up, Wyndham eagerly anticipates his rescue. However, halfway up the rope halts, leaving him dangling over the canyon. He screams and tries to climb the rope himself but lacks the strength, ending up helplessly hanging under the scorching sun. He regains consciousness from the heat and moisture to find the boy spraying him with a hose and mocking his plight. Several other children, ranging from very young to teenagers, appear on the cliff. Dressed in clothes evidently taken from others, they taunt Wyndham and swing the rope, causing him to crash against the canyon walls. In desperation, he calls out for help from Alina, who is seen angrily shouting at the children. Wyndham loses consciousness after another violent impact with the wall. That night, he wakes up in bed and tries to get up immediately. Alina, puzzled by his actions, listens as Wyndham expresses his desperation to escape. She explains that the children are homeless and have gathered in the desert, surviving as best they can. While they talk, Mather notices the children on the cliff watching them, and the house's windows begin to burn. The next day, Wyndham observes as Alina releases a bird, invading its ability to fly. Alina provides him with a spare set of clothes, which touches him despite not having requested them. As time passes, Wyndham starts a small garden at the bottom of the canyon. Occasionally, the children bring him various items including food and drinks, surprising him since there are no stores around. Wyndham is confused by the children's behavior. They first feed him and then mock him, but Alina accepts it as normal. As he becomes more involved in the household, he marvels at Alina's calm demeanor. One night, while trying to ask her questions, they are interrupted by cries from the yard. Alina advises Wyndham not to go outside during such disturbances, but he rushes out and finds the boys in bizarre clothing gathered around the house. They taunt, push, and beat him before disappearing into the night. Demanding answers from Alina, Wyndham questions who these children are, why they live there, and why she remains in this dreadful place. Alina stays calm but doesn't reveal that she is a prisoner. That evening, she visits Wyndham and, starved for affection, he eagerly welcomes her. As time passes, the first sprouts appear in Wyndham's garden. One day, the boy in the cap calls from above, promising to bring some soda. Wyndham returns to his plants and discovers a wedding ring and car keys buried in the sand. That evening, Alina shows him a portrait of a woman, calling her the first mother, and reveals that she is expecting his child. Shocked, Wyndham is unable to believe it, especially since he never wanted children, particularly with someone he barely knows. He yells at Alina, but ultimately has no choice but to accept the situation. The next morning, Wyndham discovers that his garden has been destroyed by local birds. Despite this setback, Alina willingly helps him replant, which earns his gratitude. Gradually, life in the house starts to settle into a routine. Alina manages the household while Wyndham focuses on exercising to rehabilitate his leg. One day, the boy in the cap visits again, showing great curiosity and asking Wyndham numerous questions. Wyndham asks him to help Alina, explaining that she is going to have a child and they will need a doctor. He also requests the boy bring some rope and a heavy object to use as a counterweight for his escape plan. Wyndham intends to climb out, go to the city, and get the necessary help for both Alina and the boy. The boy agrees to assist, but later one of the older boys arrives and takes him away. Later, Wyndham explains to Alina that the boy is intelligent and wants to live differently, and that he wants to help both the boy and her. Alina reacts oddly, trying to understand exactly what Wyndham feels he is missing. When he mentions freedom, she is confused as she believes no one restricts him here, which she considers freedom. Wyndham describes the outside world, reminiscing about the ocean and a cheeseburger. Alina doesn't know what a cheeseburger is, so Wyndham explains. She shares that her mother used to say that mirages exist outside, but here in the desert, everything is real. Wyndham then shows Alina his camera photos from the day he arrived, but what captures her attention most is not the solar eclipse, but a random photo taken in the car with music playing in the background. At night, Wyndham is plagued by nightmares of the children's terrifying faces, mocking him. In the morning, he hears a horrific scream from Alina and rushes outside, only to find the boy in the cap crucified on wires over the canyon. The other children, now savage, stand on the cliff laughing. Alina suddenly accuses Wyndham of killing her son, striking him on the head with a board. When Wyndham regains consciousness, he finds himself locked in a cage. Despite his pleas and begging, Alina shows no intention of releasing him, feeding him like an animal while her children come to watch his suffering. One day, Wyndham spots a girl on the cliff who clearly doesn't belong there. He manages to catch her attention, though he's too frightened to shout for fear of waking Alina. Whispering, he begs her to call for help. She understands, promises to do what she can, and leaves, assuring him she will return soon. Wyndham waits in hiding, observing Alina, who is heavily pregnant, as she goes about her chores. Suddenly, he hears screams and sees the savages catching the girl. They drag her to the cliff and kill her dramatically before his eyes. As time passes, Wyndham remains confined in the cage, involuntarily witnessing the unnatural rituals performed by Alina, her children, and her brothers. One day, he declares to Alina that he wants to stay there forever to raise his child and love her, offering himself completely. He says this is his choice, but Alina laughs, telling him he never had a choice. He was merely a seed blown here by the wind, and the child is solely hers. Wyndham will remain in the cage until the baby is born, as nothing in the desert goes to waste. Finally, the day of the birth arrives. Alina screams from the house while Wyndham paces in his cage. Alina, in a state of desperation, begs Wyndham for help, claiming this is the most difficult birth she's ever had. She releases him from the cage, and he does his best to ease her pain while the children watch from the cliff. Suddenly, Wyndham sees a ladder descending from above, but when Alina cries out, he stays by her side. The child is born during the solar eclipse. Wyndham takes the baby girl in his arms, overjoyed to be a father, and kisses her. Alina begs him to hand the baby over, and when she receives the child, she promises to care for and protect her until she becomes the new mother. She says Wyndham has fulfilled his purpose, and now she will fulfill hers. At that moment, the boy sneaks up and slits Wyndham's throat, exulting over the collapsing body and saying he's doing it for the mother. Later, Alina gathers Wyndham's belongings, packs them in a chest, and goes to the baby, reassuring her that everything will be fine. Meanwhile, Wyndham's body decomposes in the yard of the house, turning to dust and causing grass to sprout around it. This marks the end of this unusual film. If you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell icon for more.